What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one I wanted to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to break down what's happened to the overall markets thus far as I give you guys my price predictions for tomorrow. Talk about some very important data and news that just came out and how things are looking in my honest opinion. Before I break down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, I just want to call out something very important. Tesla has this resistance around this 175 area. And if we do try to push higher, we're going to be watching 177.6 and then 180 as resistance areas. If you come back down, watch 173.75 for a very minor support and 172 as stronger support. Those are your very important levels to be watching for on Tesla, but the question is, how is it going to move between these levels? I'm going to give you guys a very, very in-depth analysis of this and talk about what I think could end up happening for tomorrow. I'm also going to break down more information about the news first. So let's first go over this before I break down the charts. I think it's very important to always know the context of what's happening throughout a day. So every single day is made up of data, and this data can affect the markets. And oftentimes, data is used as an excuse or a reason for these big institutions to move liquidity around all over the place. So they buy at certain levels, they start selling, they start letting their algorithms take over, and the algorithms are what end up dictating the way the market moves. And that's why it's very important to watch and see how these pieces of data affect these algorithms. So going into tomorrow, all the data is very minor. There's nothing too crazy coming out. We do have the New York Fed Treasury purchases coming out at 10:30 a.m., which is very minor data. And by the way, speaking of time, I just want to mention that today is daylight savings. If you guys haven't remembered that, make sure that you remember and you're prepared for this because your entire circadian rhythm could change because of this. It can have a very big effect on all of us. So make sure you're prepared for this. This will affect your ability to trade, how you end up going about your daily lives. And daylight savings has just once again begun. Anyways, so at 10:30 a.m., we have some very minor data. That's not going to affect us too much. But starting at 11 a.m., we do have some pieces of data. We have consumer inflationary expectations. Might cause a very small move, but nothing too crazy. But the main pieces of data will be at 11:30 a.m. and we have the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions coming out. And at 1 p.m., we have the 3-year note auction. All this data is kind of minor overall. I do think that there might be some volatility around 11 a.m. and also around 1 p.m. But all of this is just in preparation for what's about to come on Tuesday. So tomorrow might end with some consolidation when we have days like this, because Tuesday, March 12th, is when we have CPI coming out before the market opens. CPI is very important. It's going to cause some high volatility. This is coming out an hour before market open, core CPI as well. Why is this so important? It's because of the fact that with all this data coming out, we're going to be looking for big changes. And we're going to be watching to see if this causes the market to make insane moves as well. So for tomorrow, we have minor data, bigger data on Tuesday, and we'll see how things go. On top of this, for earnings, just as a reminder, we have Ballard, we have LTech, and just a few others, very minor earnings for Monday, Oracle as well. Then for Tuesday, we have ADM, Kohl's, and more retail stocks coming out. Wednesday, we have Dollar Tree and a few others like Petco. Thursday, we have Dollar General, Adobe, Dix, and that's pretty much it for now. But we'll see what happens as we approach the trading week. All this data, all these earnings are very, very minor. Now, for now, the market's becoming less greedy than before. We were at extreme greed. The market was extremely greedy. The market was getting bought up and squeezing like crazy. Now we're less greedy than before, and we're back to greed as things are cooling off just a bit. This is completely natural. But the question that I'm going to be asking and what I'm going to be watching for is going to be, first off, how do put and call positionings end up changing? Do we see this starting to go up as we see more puts being bought? Or does this maintain this level? We're very close to where our support was, and where this thing likes to start to bounce. So watch for that very carefully if this leads to some kind of pullback. Another big thing, and the biggest thing I think of all, is going to be market volatility. So this is the VIX. The VIX is very important for implied volatility, and this has been very manipulated as of recently because of how these institutions are looking at, I would say, seasonality changes, and also because of how they affect daily options traders. But there are other reasons why. In a nutshell, I'm just watching to see if the VIX goes up. Does it go up higher or not? Overall, does it respect a nice uptrend? We're currently above our 50 daily moving average, and we'll see if this thing goes higher. So we'll see how it goes from there. That's very important for SPY in the markets. If this thing does start going up higher, that's going to be a bearish signal for us. So we'll see about that for now. Now, when it comes to news about Tesla, we had some negative news and some okay news. Uh, One good piece of news is the fact that the Tesla German Gigafactory is going to restart next week, according to the Work Council, and it has an output capacity, of 6,000 cars every single week. Now, when are they going to be reopening? We're not 100% sure, but it could be around March 17th, maybe a little bit earlier. But sometime during this week, we might be getting news that they're reopening. That's going to be great news for them. They shut down because of the arson that took place. There was a group that took credit for this in Germany for basically causing this gigafactory to lose electricity. And that was some huge news. We'll see if anything changes from here. Also in Germany, there's a protest beginning against Tesla's plans to expand the gigafactory because because they believe that this may lead to more and more concerns for the environment, be very, very bad for their water systems as well. There's been a lot of talk about that, and that's been some negative news. So with this protest going on, they're very much just against Tesla expanding, what's happening in the area, and they want to protect their water. They want to protect their overall reservoirs and such. So this is very important. We'll see what happens with this moving forward, but the protests are continuing in Germany and they're not really in support of Tesla's expansion efforts. We'll see if they could come to an agreement, so a lot of negotiations are necessary. There was a negative piece of news. Angela Chow, who's well known across the world, I believe she's related to Mitch McConnell, and not like related, but she's like the sister-in-law of Mitch McConnell, I believe. And on top of this, she's also the younger sister of the Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. That's very important. She basically passed away, and many investigations are being made, but authorities suspect it may have been because she accidentally put her Tesla in reverse, and that led to her, passing away, which is very sad. All I just want to say is that I have a lot of respect for her and the entire family. I want to send condolences their way, and it's very sad to hear this about anyone, and it's very horrible news. So, with this happening, not the best of news. It may affect Tesla to some extent, so we'll see what this causes. But for now, we'll just look at more data and then see what the technicals tell us, because that's going to be more telling. Morgan Stanley is giving Tesla an overweight rating, saying it's going to eventually outperform the market, which is a decent piece of news, but they did cut some of their overall price targets. I talked about that last week. The price price ratio is dropping because Tesla is showing lots of weakness compared to before and also compared to SPY, which is not the best of signs. Mondays, on the other hand, tend to be green about 53% of the time, and look for more volatility around 11 a.m., 2 p.m., and also around 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. March tends to be a better month for Tesla historically, but things are a little bit different because Tesla's been weak throughout the year as a result of lots of negative news, and also because of their changes to fundamentals and things going on in the macroeconomic environments. So we'll see how things go. I've been seeing a lot of sell orders for Tesla as of recently. The bulk majority of them are there for inside trades, and order flow is still not looking the strongest, but we'll see if there are any improvements. Volume has come down to about 85 million. We'll see if anything causes volume to go up. And short volume has still been dropping, so we'll see what changes from there. Anyways, that is it for my main analysis in terms of data and news. Now let's just break down what's happening with the charts real quick. So as far as Tesla and the market goes, we have a bearish looking daily candlestick on Tesla, as Tesla got this big rejection right here when looking at the daily time frame. Tesla was trying to bounce, and we got this rejection off our 20 EMA, which is a sign of weakness. And from a technical standpoint, it does look like Tesla might drop a little bit lower overall with this weak daily candlestick, but we're approaching some nice support at this 172 area, because the last time we touched that, we did see Tesla attempts to rebound. So how do I think this is going to go? It's very simple. Basically, watch your levels on Tesla. As you know, we have resistance at 175 and 178, support at 173.75 and 172. I think that's going to drop a little bit lower tomorrow, especially when we try to open. We could be retesting 172. Then we'll have to see if this thing could bounce or not off that area, because the last time we touched this, we got this nice little bounce. So it might come down a little bit, attempt to rebound a little bit, and just trade sideways as time goes on. And then we'll see if we make a big move after CPI comes out on Tuesday. But that's going to affect Tesla. So I think it's going to drop a little bit, rebound a bit, then just consolidate a bit approaching CPI. And then CPI is going to cause a much bigger move. That's my best prediction for Tesla. Now, also know that Tesla is very news dependent. So out of nowhere, if there's a crazy piece of news, we could always push much higher to like 178 plus if there's a bullish piece of news. If there's a bad news, we could always fall towards 160 or even below that, like crazy. So always watch for the news. But the best prediction I could give you is that we're going to likely sink a little bit lower for Tesla, retest 172 or so. The daily is looking kind of weak, and we're approaching that key support. And we'll see if Tesla attempts to get a bounce or not from there. So watch and see a retest of 172, a little rebound from there to like 175 or so, then sideways consolidation, price action. How about for SPY? How may SPY dictate this? Well, I see something very similar developing on SPY. Now, the daily is looking very weak on SPY, same thing with SPX, and it does suggest that there could be more downside coming. But if you look at the 4-hour time frame, we kind of pushed to this 518 area of resistance, came back down, and now we're below our 20 EMA, which suggests that the trend is turning a little bit more bearish. So for the short term, I think it's going to come down to this 509 to 510 area. We might test this, but look at the charts. Historically, we like to kind of like bounce very close to this 50 EMA, the yellow line. So look at the yellow line. We kind of like touched this, bounced a little bit. We touched it, then we bounced a little bit. This is when we were on an uptrend, by the way. So this could always change in the future. But for now, we touched this, we bounced. So there's a very good chance that if we do touch this for now, we could get a temporary small little bounce once we hit this support. And then after that, later on, we could always break this and start sinking to lower levels if we are on a downtrend. So I think tomorrow we might come down, to 509 to 510. We might test the 50 EMA, and then we might be looking for a little rebound towards this 512 area, maybe a little bit higher, then come back down. And we might just close kind of flats tomorrow, a little in the red. And then CPI will determine if we get one more attempt to push higher or not. My view of the market is this: even if we do get some kind of push thanks to CPI, we're likely not going to break 518 again. We could either retest or come a little bit lower, establish a lower high. And I think that this is going to be a change of a trend change. So what I mean by that is this is a sign of a trend change. We have this high here that we broke, right? We made a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Well, soon we're going to start doing the opposite and make a lower high. And I think that that's what SPY is going to do. So in a nutshell, let me make this very simple to understand. SPY might drop a little bit more in the morning tomorrow. It's going to likely, in my opinion, test this 510 area. The daily looks very, very weak, so I wouldn't be surprised if we go a little lower. Then we rebound. We get a little rebound to back up to 512 or so. Maybe we go back to 513. Then we come back down and close kind of flat intraday. But then after CPI comes out on Tuesday, we'll see if this thing gets one more push or not. And if we get that push, we might just establish a lower high compared to 518, then just continue lower and start this downtrend. We haven't been downtrending for a while. It's been a long time since we saw SPY downtrend. It's been uptrending for months. I think the time is finally coming. All right, so what do I think is going to happen? A little drop to retest this support at this 510 area, maybe very close to that. Then a bounce, a little rebound attempt. Then a rejection, we come back down. CPI causes a big move, and ultimately, I think that SPY is going to downtrend very soon. For the QQQ, I'm seeing something very similar developing. We got this big rejection on our hourly time frame. We're not looking the strongest, and there is going to be a risk of this potentially dropping lower. But if we look at the charts, especially when looking at the triple Q on the 4-hour time frame, the QQQ has lost the 50 EMA right over here. So this makes me think that there is going to be a risk of more downside. I think that it might retest 436 as soon as tomorrow during the morning period, rebound a little bit, retest maybe 440 or so, come back down, and then after CPI, maybe we get one more pop in and drop, or we just drop from there. Ultimately, I do see more downside coming anyways, and we do have a big gap to fill below. So I see this as a liquidity grab, a big rejection. The daily is looking kind of weak on the QQQ if you look at it. So I think there's a very good chance the QQQ is going to reverse from here. I think there's a very, very good chance of that. The daily shows that it's going to be testing most likely 436 very soon. Maybe rebound a little bit off of that and then continue to sink. So look for that move tomorrow. That's the most likely possibility. Drop to 436, rebound, then a continuation down is the most likely possibility, in my honest opinion. For Nvda, I'm seeing the same thing essentially developing because Nvda got a big rejection. It's been a very long time since we saw such a bearish looking daily candlestick on Nvda. It's been a long time since that last happened. And I think that the chart does suggest the possibility of that continuing. We also have this big gap below. But look at Nvidia's chart. I know it's a little small, but look, we never saw this big of a red day in how many months? It's been a long time. This is significant. So I think the 4-hour is kind of giving this away. The 4-hour is showing it's going to retest around 844 or so, which happens to be a big historical support on the chart. Once we reach 844, we might rebound a little bit. Maybe it comes back up to grab liquidity again, and then we're going to continue even lower later on. That's what I think is going to happen. So we test 844, we bounce a little bit. Maybe it's because of CPI, maybe it happens intraday. retest 888, and then we come back down later on, we reject and continue to sink from there. I find that's to be the most likely possibility as we approach the later days. 444 and 430, 844 and 834 are two key supports. We have 862, 872, and 880 as resistance. Might drop a bit, rebound, and then continue lower as time goes on. For Apple stock, now this is kind of ironic, but Apple is showing a little bit more life than other stocks out there because this thing is starting to uptrend just a bit. I think that going into tomorrow, Apple, because we got this big rejection, could actually drop it back down to 170, maybe a little bit lower, rebound a little bit intraday, and we might see an attempt to try to get back to this yellow trend line thanks to CPI before it rejects again. But overall, Apple is still on a downtrend. It's been rejecting off the yellow trend line, as you guys could see. So I think it might come down a little bit more, retest 170, maybe a little bit lower, attempt to rebound to 170.9, and then continue to sink. But make sure you watch these levels. We have 170 as support, 169 as minor support, 168 as stronger support, 170.9 as resistance, followed by the yellow trend line close to the 172s. So we'll see how it goes from here. Apple as well on the 4-hour is not looking the strongest. I might reject off this, come back down a little lower towards 170, if not 168, rebound a bit, and then continue from there, and we'll see how well it does. But we'll see if Apple could try to continue to break out. It might start off a little bit weak first, come down a bit at first, and then try to bounce, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, that is it for the main 5 I typically talk about. Let's just talk about a couple more tickers real quick and break down these charts. Rivian is showing a little bit of weakness, okay? Watch 13 as resistance, and we also have support around 12.5. I think it's going to test 12.5, however, and if we lose 12.5, 11.96 is likely coming. My guts does tell me it's going to retrace towards about 11.96. 11.96 is the most likely possibility. Then it may attempt to bounce from there. For SoFi, we're looking kind of bullish. There's a very good chance it's going to try to push higher, especially if you break 7.8. 8.05 could be a nice target, especially since we have an imbalance up here. So I think 8 could be coming on SoFi. Might push a little bit higher and outperform the markets. If we lose 7.65, we turn a bit more bearish, but I find that to be less probable. We're more likely to push for 8.05. ARM is looking kind of bearish right now. I do see that the daily is suggesting 127 is coming. So I think that with this downtrend potentially being established, 127 is going to be our next target, and a bigger drop could be coming to fill this gap. So I think 127 is most likely coming on the daily, so watch for that very carefully. For Supermicro on the daily time frame, there's 1100 basically that's going to likely be tested. Might pop a bit first and eventually make our way down to 1097, if not 1100. If we lose that, a bigger drop could end up coming later on. But I do believe this might actually just sink a bit more. I think 1100 is going to be tested, so watch for that very carefully. For Palantir looks a little bit weak on the daily, and on the 4-hour time frame, I do see an attempt for 25.09 to be coming as we've lost to 20 EMA. If we hold below 25.89, a bigger drop to 25.09 is coming. If we lose that, an even bigger drop is coming to 24. So I think that it's going to sink to 25.09. It looks a bit more bearish. The IWM is kind of flat right now. It might just trade a little bit sideways, but I do see a test of 206.12 coming. So it might sink a bit more, and watch that very, very carefully. For Microsoft, I think that Microsoft is rejecting off this resistance right here. So there's a risk of it coming all the way down to 401 again if we lose support at 405. So watch for that very, very carefully. It looks kind of weak right now with the drop that happened on Friday, not to mention more dropping in the after hours. So if we lose 405, I think 401.5 is coming next. So watch that very, very carefully. Watch resistance at 407, 410, and then higher levels, but I think it might reject and come back down even lower. For ARM on the 4-hour time frame, in my opinion, we might see this thing actually retest 205. If we lose this, we might see 198. Did I say ARM? I meant AMD. Excuse me, guys. AMD, I could see 198.5 coming. It looks a little bit more bearish to me after this liquidity grab. So they swept liquidity and they continued to sink it. They started selling at these high levels, and this is what led this thing to selling off with lots of other people holding the bag. So I see 198.5 coming. For a few more, we have the VIX. The VIX is showing a little bit of life. It's starting to uptrend a bit, but it's not extremely strong because it's highly manipulated. So watch and see if we kind of like try to bounce off the support at 14.67, if not 14.27, and we continue higher. I'll be watching for that very carefully. For the SQQQ, we're looking kind of bullish. It looks like it could push towards 11.37. If this pushes higher, this is a bearish signal for the QQQ, so this does suggest the QQQ has more downside. For Coinbase, we're looking kind of bullish, trying to push up here. As long as we hold above 250, there is a good chance it's going to try to push for 265. If we lose 250, we turn bearish for 238, but I think there's a very good chance it's going to try to hold. If we lose 250, I think we might try to push a little higher before we come back down. But then I think there's going to be a test of 250, and we might end up losing that later. So I think it might push a little bit first and slowly make its way back down to 250, and there is going to be a risk of it retesting its 20 EMA later on. So it might pop for a little bit longer before it comes back down lower, so watch for that carefully. Google is trying to push towards 137. We'll see if it can break this. If it does break this, 139 is coming. If it rejects, watch 135 as support, and then we can sink back down. We're trying to uptrend overall, so we'll see if we can break 137 and push higher. So we'll see how it goes. But this is showing a little bit of life, so we'll see. On Amazon, we were showing some weakness because there's a possible head and shoulders like structure. If it loses 172, there's a risk of it coming down to 167, if not 165. So there is a risk of downside on Amazon if we lose 172. Right now, we're trying to hold our 50 EMA at 174, so we'll see how well it holds, and we'll be very careful with this setup. It's a nice setup. There's a very good chance it's going to play out, but watch for confirmation just to be safe. Also, watch resistance at 178 and 180, and watch that support at 172. If we lose that, a big drop is coming. For Meta, in my opinion, is showing some weakness. If we lose 502.78, a drop is going to come to 500 and 494. So we'll see if we bounce off those levels or not. But there is a risk of this coming down a little bit lower towards 494. With that being said, guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. That is it for the video. Enjoy the weekend, and just know that when it comes to Tesla, we tend to be very news dependent. So the news could have a big effect on Tesla, and sometimes it could make my analysis less accurate because of that. So I can't always predict that, but I can tell you that technicals do show Tesla dropping a bit lower. The medium term is looking a little bit more bearish for Tesla, and the short term does show a little bit more of a drop coming towards this support right here before it tries to see a little miniature bounce. So we'll see how it goes. With that being said, enjoy your Sunday. Relax, guys. Do what you have to do and get ready for the trading day for tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you and peace out.